Thank you everyone for being here. It's a huge privilege for me to be on this stage, to listen to such great talks from all the people that kind of made it possible in the last 10 years for me to work. So I've been using Node for a long time and never had the chance to say thank you for all the work all those people put in. So thank you very much for 10 years of Node, everyone. My talk is about the JAMStack. And before we start, I want to give you a little story time. Click it. OK. Works. A story time where I want you to guess the technology stack. So before I joined Dynatrace, I was involved in a couple of web projects with agencies and as a freelancer. And we had some projects which kind of went a little bit different than you would like them. This is not a blame game now, so I anonymized all those examples. They come from real-world projects. They're just a little bit rephrased, so you don't find the real website, but still they're quite astonishing. So the first example I want to show you is 10 pages of a company-wide intranet. They don't have any more on this intranet, just a campus plan, a couple of contacts. It gets updated 2 or 3 times a year when the summer intern comes into the company. And there's a menu plan. And the obvious choice for such a project is a JBoss library portal. They've chosen the JBoss library portal because the menu plan offered a portlet, so this was easy to integrate. The very ambitious frontend took 3 frontend developers about 6 months to get done because the markup provided by library was so convoluted. Another example. Foodie Facebook. Thousands of members put their recipes online. They can share, they can like it, they can put it on a diet plan, and coaches can comment on them and give them tips and can help adjusting. And the obvious choice for a project like this is, of course, WordPress. WordPress. This clicker doesn't work. I just stand here. And they've used WordPress because there was this plugin called BuddyPress. Anyone remembers BuddyPress? Yeah, cool. Which brought them, like 50% of all the features they wanted to tackle. For the other 50% of the features, they had to change everything in the WordPress core. The software still runs on WordPress 2.7 to this day, and nobody dares to update it. A huge shout out to the people who actually went to rewrite every line of WordPress because this was a huge effort. Last example. An event page, people can select seats, they can buy tickets, they can reserve seats for their friends, send them invite mails to get the seat right next to them, and they can buy within a couple of hours. And the obvious choice for a project like this is a Java enterprise application. Well, a Java enterprise application that publishes 20 JSON files every other hour and 7 PHP scripts, which means they have one Java enterprise application to manage all the content and to produce a whole new different application that gets actually executed. And, just like Chris mentioned yesterday in his keynote, code is never the challenge, and it wasn't here. So these were just tools they've chosen because they had a problem to solve, and this was their obvious choice at that time. And when we look at our trade, when we look at the tools of our trade, and there are a lot of tools in our trade, there's just not this one solution for every side of a web project, for every angle of a web project that we want to solve. There's front-end developers. I consider myself to be a front-end developer. I care about accessible markup, robust CSS, and just enough JavaScript to sprinkle atop it to make it pop. There's been content management system developers. They care about data, about structures, about having a good editing experience. There's the application developers who care about process and state. And last but not least, there's the hosting layer. There's the hosting people. They care about having an available website, a scalable website, and a secure website. And if you look at the project that I've just shown you, and actually a lot of projects, most of it revolves around the CMS layer. And for good reason. So if you're working with a company that needs to manage content, this is what you sell. You sell the editing experience for this team that has to manage content, has to edit content. But this inevitably leads to technology lock-in. So once you're set with one of those systems, you are developing for this system. If you select WordPress or a live portal or whatever, you are developing for this system and not maybe for the actual need that you solve. As said, this is kind of understandable since you sell the content management systems to your client, but there's a much, much bigger group that you should care about, which are your client's users. And your client's users don't care if they have used WordPress to manage the content. They don't care if you have written your application in PHP, Node, or whatever. They care about seeing stuff in the web browser. So I was thinking, what if we focus on the front-end layer? So when I was leading the front-end team at this web agency, we developed the front-end totally separate from everything else, and we started using templating languages a lot. So you've seen from Jan yesterday the history of Masters.js, a great template language that helped me a lot in the past. And from a templating language, it's just a small step to a static site generator. Static site generator basically is have this content, have this markup, and create actual physical HTML pages out of it. I made a very professional animation for you, so think of this as the template. This is the content. Then you have a build process. It does its magic. And you get static HTML pages. And you can put those HTML pages on any server that you like. This is an example from my blog. This is just some liquid templating syntax. This is the content to it. It's marked on. It gets passed into HTML, included in this template, and voila, I have my blog post ready. And having all those websites generated up front fundamentally changes how web servers need to work. So this is the traditional pull architecture. For every web request that you do, it goes through a couple of layers, fetches data, renders everything, and puts it out. This is how WordPress works. This is how you work with your Express server or basically with anything else. Static site generators transform this into a push architecture. You take all the content from all the resources that you have, you render every page up front, and then you upload it on a server. The whole generation happens on a CI level in the ideal case, and the server is just serving the pre-generated HTML. It's basically warming up your cache. If you have a very robust cache layer, you can create every page that ever needs to be served up front. When we use static site generators, we can look at the hosting layer totally different. So this is how static site generators work, and I just put the random server icon on the very right. But what if you just upload it to the whole world? Any storage, any cloud storage that you can think of, a CDN in front of it, and that's it. You don't need more. Every web server can serve static HTML. This is the Dynatrace help page, and this is a video. It runs on slow 3G, but you can see when you click on it, the feedback or the new page loads almost instantly. There's no JavaScript magic in it. It's just serving an HTML page. We have good caching strategies for our assets, and that's about it. The cool thing about it is that we can use any sources that we like. We can have Markdown, we can have JSON, we can have some APIs that we combine and generate HTML out of it. And it's just HTML, which means we can deploy it everywhere. Some people deploy it on the Dropbox or the Google storage, and this just works. With that, it becomes easily scalable, like your servers burn down. Well, static sites can be served anywhere. They're blazingly fast, and they're super secure. So if the server is just able to serve static HTML, it's really, really hard to hack it. On the downside, this needs a build process, preferably on a CI server. And this build process can increase as the site grows bigger. So the Dynatrace help page features about 5,000 pages, which took about 2.5 hours to build, which is a lot of time. And we refactored the whole building process. So we dropped Jekyll and created our own Node.js-based static site generator to bring it down to 2 minutes, which was quite nice. Static site generators don't work really well with binary data. And some static site generators are more flexible than others. So be sure to pick the right one for your need. But in the end, we focused on the front-end layer. And it had a really good effect on the hosting layer. So all the things we are concerned about when hosting our website are solved. It's available, it's stable, and it's secure. And we can freely spin up another instance or store it in another storage container or have our CDN point to some other resource without having to maintain all the tech stack underneath. So there's no MySQL that we have to manage. There's no PHP that we have to manage. Now let's look at the content layer. And there are different approaches on how to manage content for static sites. One very popular among tech folks is like Microsoft Azure documentation does. So if you look at the screen, you might notice there's a little edit button over here. And when you click this edit button, you come to GitHub. And there's a markdown representation of this very page, which is cool. So you can fork it, you can edit it, and you have basically all the software versioning capabilities for your content. At Dynatrace, we spin up for every branch that we create a new preview. So we're building a whole web page with the branch that you're editing, spin it up on the server. As said, we can spin it up anywhere. We give feedback to the pull request, so you can have preview links with all the documentation that you just created. You can review it, you can comment on it. It creates a whole new dynamic for content management workflows, which we only know from software development. So this is cool. There's even some companies who take the code snippets, the examples from code snippets, and make unit tests on it to make sure those code snippets actually work, which I find amazing. But this is nothing for non-tech-savvy users. So Git is a beast to work with. And people who just casually want to edit content, you don't teach them Git just for the sake of fixing a typo. And this is where I think headless content management systems really solve the problem. There are lots of great headless content management systems out there. One that I want to mention is Storyblock. So Storyblock is somehow able to integrate previews with every tech stack that you have. So no matter which static site generator that you use, they are able to give you a preview, like a live preview, and they're super easy to use, so I love them a lot. But they are much, much more than that. And the cool thing is that with headless content management systems, content management becomes content management again and not content design. So I guess everybody remembers like, oh, this is a wonderful design that you just ordered. Let's make this headline big, red, and underlined. I guess this happened to every one of us. With headless content management systems, you are 100% output independent. So be it your static site, be it your mobile app, any display that you want to use, you can feed it with data from the headless content management system. And for regular size projects, there are really good free plans. Also very important, availability. If your content management system burns down, your site still works, which is great. On the downside, Git as a content management system doesn't work too well. This is a very specific audience. For headless content management systems, there are almost no good open source alternatives. They still have to come. And if you have tons of users, you also pay a ton of money. Also, be aware of what's your content exit strategy. We don't want to have technology lock-in. We want to be able to move freely away from the content management system as we see fit. There also a shout out to Storyblock. They offer you to store a JSON dump of your content with every click of the publish button that you do. So you always get a good backup, and you're free to leave them as you see fit. So again, we focused on the front end, and it had some real good effect on the content management layer. Now let's enter the last part, the application layer. And with the application layer, we have to talk about serverless because it's strongly connected to the whole architecture that I'm presenting here. So who in here has not heard about serverless? Okay, everybody heard about serverless. This is great. So I don't have to repeat the thing that everybody tells you, serverless is not about having servers. It's about not caring about servers. So I never was too happy with that phrase because it does not tell you how you develop for it. And I come up with serverless is like developing for the browser, but on the server. So imagine you developing a web application for the browser and shipping your browser all the time with it. I mean, that's kind of what Electron does, but that's not the norm. That's just a very special case for it. And serverless is just like it. So with serverless, you run your code on somebody else's infrastructure. And just like we develop JavaScript for the client, we can develop JavaScript for the server by just sending files over and execute them. It's also very similar to how browsers were in the beginning, as they are hugely fragmented, so you can't have the same serverless function run on each platform. Not yet, at least not with some glue code in between, so I kind of feel like backend jQuery times with that, which is kind of fun, also a little bit annoying. But you can do really great applications for it, and you just extend your static site with enough dynamic properties. So again, the Dynatrace website, this is the search box, which is powered by a serverless function that browses through a pre-generated search index with Luna.js. So it took me about 6 hours to create a fully functional search for our 5,000-page documentation, which is great. So we tried out so many search solutions, which we thought might fit our enterprise use case. But actually, a quick node function spun up on the serverless infrastructure did the thing for us. And you can be really bold with it. So this is the Smashing membership website. Smashing Magazine, who here knows Smashing Magazine? A couple, yeah. It's a great resource for web developers. And it's one of the biggest and most popular Jamstack sites out there. And they're really bold, as this is your membership website. And when you are logged in, you replace the whole content on the client with your actual user information. So there's no pre-generated stuff on the server anymore. It's just all happening on the client there, which allows also for some nice UX patterns. So no matter if login works or if you can access your data, you always get content, which is the standard page of your membership page. You always have this baseline, this very bottom, where you can give good information, have some experience for your users without relying too much on anything that's computed on the server side. And it also makes stuff easy that I always struggled on when I was developing websites with other content management systems, like email. So this is all the code, excuse my syntax highlighting, but this is all the code that I need to send an email from an email form. I just send it, an HTTP response that everything has been done, and I send it to SendGrid, which is a third-party service that I spun up on Azure Functions, and that's about it. If you're not comfortable in just sending back JSON responses, you still can rely on the HTTP accept header. So every time you do a fetch request or XHR request, browsers send this accept header with application/JSON with it, and then you get JSON in return. If you do like enter a web page URL in your address bar, press enter, the browser sends the accept header text HTML with it, and you can use the same URL, have 2 different outputs, just as you need it. Very nice. You can even go so far that if you enter the web page via pressing the address in the URL bar, send HTML, and in all other cases, include a pre-rendered or a pre-generated JavaScript snippet that swaps the content on the fly. This is what things like Next.js or Gatsby.js do. They have also 2 content mechanisms. The one is, this is the pre-generated HTML. The other one is just enough JavaScript to make the content update and nothing more. Some good things about serverless functions, you've heard it probably. First, you pay what you need. You get a lot of executions for free, and then you enter plans, which is like, I don't know, a fraction of a cent per execution, which scales really, really well. So I always have to refer to that story from a friend who was able to reduce the server costs by a factor of 100 just by going full in serverless. And you also have a manageable attack surface. This is also, I think, very important. You don't have to turn down your whole web application or website if you find a security bug. You just have to turn down this one function that causes this security issue. You have defined input and output. You can test it really, really good. And integration with third-party services is easy. Actually, this is very much third-party land. On the downside, I still think serverless architectures are hard because we lack lots of experience with that. We don't have platform independence, like I said, so developing something for Azure Functions is totally different than for AWS Lambda. Serverless functions are stateless, but what if you like state? It adds a whole new complexity on top of it. And the more interfaces that we have, the more contracts that we have. But all in all, we could say that now that we focused on the front end, we had a really good effect on our application layer. So people are able to code in the language they want, for the platform they want. We just have contracts which are JSON, and that's about it. So that's how we make our application full circle. And working in this way, like putting the front end first and let everything revolve around it, has been summed up recently under the term of JAMStackin. I don't particularly like that name, but it's a name that we can use to talk about it, so it's good. JAMStackin stands for JavaScript, API, and markup. The bottom layer, for me, the most important one, templated markup, pre-built at deploy time, so we can serve robust, resilient, and stable websites. Then we have APIs to care for all the dynamic stuff, like fetching content from a CMS or having some computation done on a server. And we use JavaScript on the client side to swap out content. What you need for that is something where you can build your stuff, something where you can deploy your stuff, and some server, function server, or function infrastructure to execute and enhance your web pages. I particularly say it doesn't have to be a real serverless infrastructure. You can also still have your beloved monolith. As long as you talk in APIs to it, you're good. There are a couple of vendors out there. I don't want to go too much into detail because the clock is ticking. It's just a random selection of tools that I use. Netlify focuses really much on making web worker work easy. Site is about all in serverless, and I picked Azure instead of AWS because I don't have Merriam-Webster's dictionary for AWS abbreviations. So this is rather easy for me to understand: pipeline, storage, CDN, and functions. And this leads to two important things. First, no technology login, and second, incremental adoption. And this, I think, are, if you work on a long-term project, the most important things. You can start incremental adoption. You can start with a small piece of your website right away without having this big bang relaunch or dropping everything at once. So imagine a LAMP architecture with WordPress on it. It's super easy to have a Gatsby frontend to it that talks with the WordPress JSON API, and then over time add more and more tools to the stack so we have a full JAMStackin architecture, solve this wholeness of the website by a proper routing layer, and if time comes, you can switch off your old LAMP stack, and you can move all those parts to infrastructure or servers that are actually really good suited for that. And in terms of technology login, so let's say you have those 4 layers and you've chosen tools for that you see fit. It's super easy to extend them if you think other tools are better usable for that, like having Auth0 as your authentication layer and not coding it yourselves, or having next to a headless content management system also some RSS feeds from, let's say, a podcast or something, and include it on your website. And if you're not happy with what we did a lot with your static site generator, just drop it, add a new one. You don't have to rebuild everything. So to sum it up, good things. Every piece is independent. So you can work independently on it. You can exchange it as you see fit. You can use always the right tool for what you want to do. It's resilient, it's fail-safe, and it's sustainable. Also very important. And you can incrementally adopt to it. This is, I think, the most important part. It's super easy to get going and to extend and to have a real agile approach about it. And you are in full control of every part of your app. So backend developers, application developers know their tools and can work with their tools without too many constraints. Same for front-end developers or for people in the content management layer. On the downside, I think we still have lots of technologies which leads to fragmentation, and lots of technologies are very platform-specific, so keep that in mind. This is third-party land, so be aware that for every third party that you add to your stack, you have to have a strategy, and you also have to have exit strategies for your content and for everything else if you want to switch tools on the fly. But with that being said, I think, to phrase it in the words of some clever person, every website and web app that can be done with JAMStack should be done with JAMStack. And a small hint, I think every website can be done with the JAMStack. So that's that. And with that, I want to say thank you very much. I'm Stefan. I have way too many side projects running. I'm that parrot on Twitter. And if you want to talk to me about anything on the slide or about the JAMStack or about life in general, I'm here all day. Thank you very much.